All right, to continue in this presentation here, I have to be real frank with you guys. My computer crashed in the process of recording this, and I was very happy to see that my screen recorder was able to recover the recording, so that if there's like a weird hiccup in there, that's what happened, and I had to try to get all my windows back to where they were to make it all seem okay. But I remember leaving off on this slide here, so I'm going to proceed with the demonstration with this. The next little thing is a demonstration of a different type of a tag, and basically their attempt here is to kind of show you some really important HTML structures, and I have somewhat limited amount of time to get through this, so I'm going to try to plow through and get through the remaining slides in probably about 15 to 20 minutes here. All right, so with this particular section, they're starting to talk about what we call unordered list tags, and they're also going to talk about tables in just a slide or two. And an unordered list is basically a way to create a bullet list in an HTML document. The typical format for a bullet list is like what you see here. In fact, if you wanted to add this to your web page, you could just very simply copy that text and bring it over and try it out. What I'm going to do is I am going to put that on the home page towards the bottom here. So I'm just going to add this whole tag structure right here. Now the format of it is simple. It's basically you put in this unordered list formatting tool or tag here, close it, and then inside that list will be individual list items, each with their own open and closing tags, and those will appear as bullets within the document. Just to demonstrate really quick, let's save that, go back to the browser and refresh, and so now you can see the bullet list that I created. Very simple. You can do the same thing. They have another structure that's really similar that's called an ordered list. So this is an example that they put in here. And then the other example is what we call the ordered list, which instead of creating bullets, creates numbers. In fact, I'm just going to put that one up on screen. So if you use this code here, that would create a numbered list. The style of the list, the number types that are used, those can all actually be controlled through CSS, by the way. But these can be very useful structures that we often see. The UL is particularly useful because it's often used in menu construction in HTML, but also for formatting as well. Let's move on to this concept of a table. A table is a way to add to a web page what we call tabular data. And normally a table will have three basic constructs in it. So that would be the table tag itself, a row, and then a table data cell tag. And the basic construct for this is that it forms what is similar to a spreadsheet style format, which is great for making rows and columns of information. What you can do with table tags is you can add additional tags inside there, so you can add captions, and you can separate the tables into head and body sections, and a bunch of extra tags, but the key ones are shown on this slide. This isn't really part of your homework, so I'm not going to demonstrate this, but you can look it up if you wish. They have examples of the table heading tags and all that. Now, when it comes to the point of actually starting to style your documents, what you're going to discover is that CSS is really the tool that makes, it takes, a primitive web page like this one and makes it look really fancy. And the CSS is like a special language in and of itself, but it operates on some special principles that you need to learn in order to really use it effectively. The first thing that is important is that you understand that CSS views everything on a web page as appearing inside of a box. Because if you think of even the content on my screen right here, if I click on this, notice that even PowerPoint puts things in a box in order to style and control them, and that's true in HTML as well. In fact, in CSS, what you do is all the content that you might have on your screen in an HTML document would be here, but all content is also encapsulated by these three other aspects. So in other words, a border, margin, and padding. And those can all be individually controlled on each individual side of every object. It's not that you have to add those to an object, but usually when you're trying to control layout and appearance, those things become very useful and in fact can create some really dramatic effects in some cases. So next time you look at a web page, notice that a lot of stuff seems to fit into a box shape often, and is often controlled that way. The interesting thing is, when you start doing this, you'll find that there's a whole field of study that goes with just doing layouts of web pages and controlling the appearance of the content. And this is maybe one of the trickier aspects of web page construction to learn initially, but a really powerful one visually. And notice it says here that you can control the margins and the padding. Those are the blank spaces inside the object or near the object. You can control the border, and you can change all sorts of aspects. So you can have some sides have borders, some not. Some can have more spacing, some cannot. And it really depends on what you're trying to achieve with the document. Ultimately, as I've been kind of pointing out along the way here, it seems to be a best practice when HTML web page is actually controlled by a separate CSS file. And that way you are allowed to separate the content aspects from the styling elements. So it's not unusual when you create like a really big website that you might have literally thousands of lines of CSS code to control a website. And you don't necessarily want to pollute your web page content with all that CSS, because then the web page itself becomes hard to read. And so what most programmers do is they will put that style sheet in a separate file. Usually they'll have a .css file extension, and then you would add code such as this to the head section of your document, which would link to that style sheet. And then once that link is formed, all the styles are read from that separate document and then connected to the main document. I'm not going to demonstrate that here, mostly because that's not part of your assignment, by the way. But if you're really curious about exploring that, it's not that hard to do. In fact, just about any web page you might go to, and then you do that right-click, view source, and you start digging in. And I know this is going to be a complex page here, but somewhere in the mix here, they will have a style sheet link. So like right here, for example, they have a link to a style sheet. And so you can click through and you can see all the styles they use. And yes, this is what we call Minified Code, by the way, almost impossible for humans to read, but computers can read it just fine. But if you look really carefully here, you will see styling elements, added in if you start reading through it. But that is really the preferred way for coders to work, is to have an external style sheet that affects your main web page. The other advantage of that is that you can have one style sheet that controls the whole website, so you don't have to go page by page to change something. So if you decide that, hey, we want all 10,000 pages on our website to now use this new font or this new color, you change one file and the whole website changes. And that's the other power of this with a linked CSS file. CSS, people talk about what is it, why are they cascading style sheets? Well, the whole point of that is really that CSS works on specificity. Okay, so both on specificity on how you apply the style and where you apply the style. So I demonstrated before how I put a style on the whole page, and then I put a style on one tag, and how the one tag was more important because it was more localized. And always the more localized styles will override the global styles. And so you can kind of leverage that in CSS to create some pretty dramatic effects and to control, what takes precedence over something else. And that's what this really talks about here. And so one thing that designers often do as well, to add another layer of control, sometimes you want multiple objects on a page to have the same attributes. So maybe I want 6 paragraphs on my website to all be green text. I can add a class declaration to those, and then everything that's got the class that I apply a style to that class will follow. So if I just add a class statement to all my paragraphs where I go font is green, then all those paragraphs the same class will take on that effect. And so that's really handy. And it also allows you to separate, in some cases, certain styling aspects from other elements, but apply common ones to several of them at the same time while still keeping them separate. So I think it's kind of a neat little trick. So adding class declarations is kind of a fun one. They're kind of demonstrating here, for example, that they have a couple of different things, and I know that's a little small and hard to read. Maybe this will help a little bit. But notice how they have a couple of elements here that have the class volcano on them. And anywhere where the class volcano is applied, you see this bright red text. And so this right here and this right here both have that. So Mount Ashi and this nonsense text, well, it's not nonsense text, that's actually an Icelandic name, I guess. Those are both controlled from one style up here collectively. So anything that has that class declaration of volcano will have that same styling applied to it. So that's a really powerful shortcut. All right, that there's kind of, in a nutshell, a really quick primer on how to create basic web pages, how the technology works, and for some people enough to get them starting on creating web pages and really kind of moving forward with this. So if you're interested in this, I do want to remind you that we do have a web program here at Gateway, and if you're looking for an elective course or just want to learn some basics, Web Programming 1 is an excellent course where we teach all this stuff in significantly more detail. But as a primer for doing the homework in this unit, this will be an excellent start. In fact, if you followed along with the stuff I was doing, you're most of the way there to finishing that homework assignment already. What I am going to do is I am going to go back to the course shell here really quickly, and I'm going to pull down the assignment instructions for the HTML exercise. And here comes Word. And here are the instructions, and I just want to show you that relative to the stuff that I just showed you in class here, if you follow these instructions, you'll see that, this stuff is not too difficult. So we walk through the process of creating a folder, create a new document, go to that folder, create, name it index.html, start to create your HTML document, all the basic pieces that we talked about. You can see them in the highlights, and you can see that they're, pretty simple. And then ultimately, this is what you're creating. So you're not creating anything even as intense as what I created for the homework assignment. I just want to see that you can figure out how to do it. Now, the one piece that might perplex some of you is this piece, which is validating your HTML code. So one of the problems that web designers sometimes have is they create stuff, they think it looks good, and then they decide that this is going to work great everywhere, and then they launch it on their phone or go to a different computer or platform or a tablet or something, and it looks like hell. And they're like, what happened, right? So part of the problem is sometimes coders create code that's not valid. So the browsers will kind of throw their own rules at it. So what web programmers often do is they go to the W3 School's website to validate their code. And here's a link to the validator. So I'm just going to actually click through on this link and allow my browser to open this, I think, in the background. Maybe I have to click that first. And if not, I'll just go to it directly. Let's see if I'm hoping it'll work. There we go. And I want you to try this with your code. I'm not really worried about whether or not it passes validation, because I'm not here to really teach you the finer points of doing HTML. But if you follow my examples and code exactly the way that I did, or exactly what's being dictated in the homework, your code should be valid. What I typically tell students is that when they're doing their validation, they should come in here and they should choose the third tab where you just directly paste your code into this window. So you can go right to your coding engine. And so here I am in Notepad++, and I'm going to do a click inside there, and I'm going to do a Control-A to select all, and then a right-click copy. Then I'm going to jump back to the browser, and then right-click paste. And you see all my code is inside the window now, and I'm going to run the check, and hopefully I get no errors or warnings. And let's see, down here I got one warning. It says this document appears to be written in English. Oh, I didn't add the language attribute. Okay, so what they're suggesting is that I add a language attribute here. But otherwise, that's my only warning. So I just want to show you I could fix that. So I could fix it right here to test it. And this is one that when we're teaching web in a proper web program, that's a required attribute, by the way. So now I can check it again, and it should pass. And notice it says document checking completed, no errors or warnings to show. And that's ideally what you want as a web programmer, is that your page does not have errors. So that's basically the process of doing this. And if you read the instructions on this carefully, here they say file upload. I would recommend that you do it the way that I did it, by the way. And then I want you to show me your validation results. So if it passed or not, if you can scroll down to the part where it shows that it passed, or show me the part where it has a problem and screenshot that. And just so you guys know how to screenshot, in Windows you go to your Start menu and you bring up the snipping tool, and you just click on New, and then just highlight the part of the screen you want to show me, and there it is. Save that as a image file if you wish, insert it into the document, or even easier, frankly, you can just copy it and paste it in somewhere. But submit that with your completed work so I can see it, and make sure that you also submit the HTML files that you created. So if you have more than just a simple index file, then you might want to zip the contents. Otherwise, just upload the screenshot, the document, and the index file all individually with your assignment submission to complete this successfully. Hopefully you found this helpful. And that was just a really quick primer on HTML in an hour and a half, which is pretty good, so a lot of information. But once again, enough to get a lot of people started on creating web pages and get excited about it. So I think it's really an important technology, and I'm glad you guys all watched this video. See you all later.